Welcome to the 700 Club. Israel is vowing that Hezbollah will pay a heavy price for the most recent attack on northern Israel. 12 children died when a rocket hit their soccer field in a village on the Israeli-Lebanon border.
Well, there are fears that this will be the spark that turns the conflict into a wider war in the Middle East. Meanwhile, as you can imagine, the village on the Golan Heights is awash in grief and anger. Chris Mitchell has more.
Members of the Druze villages remain in shock from the attack.
Big anger. Big. I have no feelings that I can explain to you because only now are we waiting for all the children that are in the hospital to return to us safely.
I know one of the boys. He is a relative to mine, and he is also a bit of my neighbor. 2 days before the accident, I was playing with him and speaking with him, and then 2 days later, he's dead in the news.
Many Israelis now bracing for greater conflict.
It's going to escalate and there will be war. We're going to war there.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu moved up his U.S. departure to head home and convene his war cabinet. The IDF released details of where Hezbollah fired the rocket, a Falaj-1 that's manufactured in Iran. Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant vowed a heavy response.
Hezbollah, Iran's proxy in the region, will not be exonerated for this event. Even with its absurd denials, they fired, they will bear the price.
Zuri Zahavi, CEO of the Alma Research Center, tells CBN News Iran will dictate Hezbollah's next move.
Iran architected the whole campaign against Israel from the south and from the north. It's part of what they call unification of fronts. They want to create a war of attrition that would last a few years to weaken the state of Israel. And that's why I've said we need to deal with the problem and not only talk about responses and incidents.
While Secretary of State Antony Blinken says the U.S. supports Israel's right to defend itself, he's urging the Israelis to constrain their response to prevent a wider Mideast war. On Sunday, Turkish President Erdogan threatened to invade Israel, just like Turkey did in Armenia and Libya. Zahavi warned it's not just Israel's war.
This is not Israel-Hamas war. This is not Israel-Hezbollah war. This is the Iranian campaign against the Western representative in the Middle East, which is the State of Israel. And they are coming after us, but soon they will come after you, because they don't believe in gays' rights, they don't believe in human rights, in women's rights. They don't share the values that we share as democracies. And the Ayatollahs of Iran view their mission to spread the Islamic Revolution values all over the world.
Many countries, including the U.S., France, and Canada, are warning citizens to reconsider travel to Lebanon or evacuate. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
This could soon explode into not just a regional war, but a world war. Turkey is a member of NATO, and Turkey has now said, Erdogan has said, I will invade Israel. You don't do that casually. And if he does, what happens to the NATO alliance when a member of that alliance takes on an American ally, Israel? What is going to happen on the world stage with that? And where will Turkey ultimately align itself? Will Russia get involved? Iran is already involved. The rocket came from there. These are proxies, Iranian proxies. And in the ending of this conflict, we have to realize all roads lead to Iran. If you're not dealing with the source of the terror, and you're not really dealing with the problem, you're dealing only with the symptoms. So are we looking and are we on the verge of not just a Middle East conflict, but a worldwide conflict? These are times where Christians around the world need to gather and pray for the peace of Jerusalem. Well, another shocking news, it boggles my mind that the Olympic Committee would somehow claim that there was never an attempt to disrespect Christianity. It just makes no sense to me that you could approve that, you could fund that, you could plan that, and not it's obvious right in front of you what that display of the opening ceremonies was going to do. So Christians are rightfully offended. Efren Graham has that story and more.
Gordon, a spokesperson for the Paris Olympics, issued an apology Sunday after the opening ceremonies included a presentation with a controversial depiction of Leonardo da Vinci's The Last Supper. The scene showed a woman wearing a halo-like headdress with a number of drag queens on her left and right. Paris 2024 spokesperson Anne de Camp said, clearly there was never an intention to show disrespect to any religious group. If people have taken offense, we are, of course, really, really sorry. Christians around the world condemn the display. The French Bishops' Conference, representing the country's Catholic bishops, called it a mockery and derision of Christianity. U.S. Speaker of the House Mike Johnson said it was shocking and insulting to Christians. President Joe Biden announced his plan to make dramatic changes to the U.S. Supreme Court today. In an op-ed in Monday's Washington Post, the president called for a term limit of 18 years for all justices, as well as a binding and enforceable code of conduct. The president said the reforms are necessary to restore public trust in the court, whose approval sits at a record low. Critics say the proposals are a response to the conservative majority's decision overturning Roe v. Wade and other rulings. Mr. Biden also said he'll pursue a constitutional amendment prohibiting blanket immunity for presidential actions while in office. Sunday, people across the country took part in a national day of mourning for Sonia Massey. A police deputy shot the Illinois woman in her home earlier this month. The officer is now charged with murder, and the case is renewing calls for justice and police reform. Charlene Aaron has the story.
The Justice Department is investigating the death of Sonia Massey, a black woman shot to death in her home by a white sheriff's deputy. It's a case raising questions about the use of deadly police force.
You better not. I swear to God, I'll shoot you right in your face. Okay, I'm sorry. Drop the pot! Drop the pot!
Body cam footage shows the disturbing moment Deputy Sean Grayson shot and killed Sonia Massey. Massey had called 911 after she reported a prowler at her Springfield, Illinois home. Officer Grayson and his partner responded to the call. When deputies told Massey to remove a pot of boiling water from the stove, things quickly escalated.
Away from my husband in the water? Yeah. Oh, I would rebuke you in the name of Jesus.
Grayson shot Massey, who was unarmed, in the head. He has since been fired from the Sangamon County Sheriff's Department and arrested for murder and other charges.
My first reaction was anger. Of course, I felt, I was sad. There was, just a lot of hurt on the inside, just because me as a black female living in the black community, seeing this often.
The case highlights troubling behavior in Grayson's past. According to court records, he held 6 different police jobs over the past 4 years. In 2015 and 2016 came 2 DUI misdemeanors, and before that, an Army discharge for misconduct. Given that history, Chicago Police District Councilwoman Elise Edwards joins many others arguing Grayson should not have been allowed in law enforcement.
Even when an officer is sanctioned and found out, they just move around to other places. And then they're able to continue their misbehavior, their bad behavior, their misconduct.
Grayson also failed to activate his body camera until after firing the fatal shots, a violation of the state's Safety, Accountability, Fairness, and Equity Today Act, also known as the Safety Act. Carlton Mayers, Esquire, helped create the legislation, which includes standards for use of police force.
We can see that law enforcement did not utilize the training that is now mandated under state law when it comes to de-escalation, when it comes to crisis intervention techniques, trainings, and even when it comes to just in general, implicit bias and how you engage with people that have a different lived experience than your own.
Massey struggled with mental health issues, according to family. And during the encounter, police asked if she had taken her medication. Edwards says the rise in these cases points to the need for mental health experts to assist officers during 911 calls.
Why can't we free up their time to actually work on problems that are so urgent that only someone with a gun and badge can handle. So when it is a mental health crisis, we need people who are actually trained.
Meanwhile, the Justice Department is also investigating Massey's murder. Grayson faces 3 counts of first-degree murder, and if convicted, could face 45 years to life in prison. Charlene Aaron, CBN News.
On so many levels. Gordon?
The video is absolutely horrific, and you look at it and go, why in the world would you call 911 today if that's going to happen to you, if you're going to be shot and killed in your own kitchen? The very people who have vowed to protect and to serve you are now going to shoot you and somehow claim that they felt threatened by scalding hot water. It makes no sense to me. Here's something that ought to happen after this case, and there needs to be a national database that if you have been tagged and said you can't be a police officer in our department, if there are issues with your military service, if there's issues with your other service, then there ought to be a national database that says you can't be hired in law enforcement. We don't trust you to go into these tense environments. We don't trust you to go into people's homes. We don't trust you that people who are in police custody will actually survive that. We need to have this kind of thing because our very society is at risk. I'm not overclaiming this. When the people start to think that the police are the enemy, we're in trouble. That means there's no cooperation. You don't call when you need help. You end up with lawlessness as a result of that. And then when the police do respond, they've got to respond in force, and they have to have SWAT teams. We've already seen that with SWAT teams showing up to serve arrest warrants for people who are already represented by counsel, already in the court system, and for whatever reason, they're trying to make some kind of odd show of force. America should not be a police state. America should have police officers that we can all trust. And in that trust, we preserve our own society. Right now, we don't have it. And how are we going to get it back? Without some kind of self-policing where the government says if the police departments won't do this, we'll do this for them.